Hello and welcome to the Patent Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, Summer Shah, and with me is Ian Holloway. Ian, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here, Summer.
Yes, it's good to be recording again. I think we have a slightly different, maybe a special podcast episode.
Yeah, I think when we were looking through after what we had recently done with Microsoft, and just noticed that how the industry, the video game industry as a whole, just seemed kind of unique and interesting. It kind of sparked this new style or new episode format.
That's right. So, our normal pacing or our normal talking points is to pick one company and talk about its patent strategy and grade its patent strategy. And we did Xbox last, and we kind of took a tour through the gaming industry, and we were thinking about doing Nintendo or Sony next, or even Steam and a few other players in the gaming space. And we said these are all, our analysis is kind of the same across the board, just because the macroeconomic headwinds or tailwinds are about the same for each of these companies. So instead of talking about them individually and perhaps repeating ourselves, maybe we should talk about them collectively. And that's, I think, what we're going to do, hopefully.
Yeah.
And talk about their patent strategies in a different way. I think a lot of the analysis is going to be the same, Ian, right? We're just going to be talking about more than one company at this point.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. So why don't we kick us off here, Ian? Tell us what's going on from a big picture perspective in this space.
Well, I got to start off by thanking Matthew Ball. Did some great research that helped us kind of solidify our analysis here. So I think a wonderful find, and we'll include the link there in the description as well. But with the video game industry coming in, looking at the last decade, starting in 2011, they've experienced an amazing amount of growth from 2011 to 2021, pretty much triple what real world GDP is putting out. They're up 108%, which, have you ever seen that in an industry for 10 years, Summer?
No, it's pretty incredible how fast this space has grown, for how long it has grown, and how big it is, and how quietly it has grown, right? I mean, like, industries that grow at this pace tend to receive a lot of press, and everybody knows about it. NVIDIA's stock shot up recently, and everybody talks about it, and NVIDIA's the belle of the ball, so to speak. Nobody talks about the video game industry, at least not that I know of in mainstream media.
No, definitely not in mainstream media. And I wonder if reasoning could be cultural, could just be it's not a traditional investment vehicle that people look at. So there's a lot of privately owned companies in here too, rather than just publicly traded. So perhaps that's contributing to that suppression, if you will, of the information. So big positives for the video game industry, right? Going into 2011. At least.
It's huge. If you can kind of go back one more slide, they have grown. Maybe we should just pause here for a second. It has grown at a rate of 108% over the course of last 10 years, from 2011 to 2021. That is 3x faster than the world real GDP has grown, and it is 2x faster than the US real GDP has grown over the same period of time. And in that period of time, the US GDP was growing like gangbusters. So this kind of hopefully puts it into perspective, just how fast this space has grown. Twice the rate of the US real GDP. Incredible stuff when US was growing at really unprecedented rates, growing like gangbusters. So the video game industry is in a league of its own, if you will.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think about in general. Although it's interesting here that Japan has actually dropped, I think, from the research here over those about the same period. I guess they gave them 15 years.
Yeah, this is what happens when you have a declining population growth. And well, we'll get into it at some other time, I'm sure.
Yes. We will.
Something for us to worry about here in the US at some future point in time, I'm sure.
Looking into the future with your crystal ball a little bit there, I think, Summer. So I guess the big question is what caused this kind of boom, right? So everybody's doing well, but they're doing 3x, 2x better than everybody else in the video game industry here.
That's right. I think there are a lot of converging factors that made this happen. I'm sure we'll talk about this as we go. The rise of mobile games from 2011 to 2021 has, I mean, generally just there's more people with cell phones in their pockets in that period of time, and then more people with cell phones in their pockets with games in those cell phones, right? So that has really brought the industry forward.
And mobile gaming makes up a pretty large percentage of actual sales as well, correct?
Yeah. Do we have the numbers on that? My memory is that it's over 50% of gaming generally.
It is over 50%. Yeah. I don't think we have the exact numbers, but do remember it's all the small purchases, all the microtransactions adding up very quickly. And you said just a wider consumer base, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has a cell phone, but not everybody has a PC set up for gaming or a console set up for gaming or a mobile gaming device.
That's right. That's right. And again, want to shout out Matthew Ball here. I had been doing research on this space for several days or weeks, and I had put pieces of this information together, but Matthew Ball just kind of, just dropped a magnum opus on us. And I'm really grateful for that, because I don't think that many people have this kind of broad macro understanding of the gaming space. So our analysis was certainly helped by him. And I feel bad. We'll certainly link to his slide deck, but a lot of the early part of our podcast is going to be just regurgitating what he has said, because he has done such a good and comprehensive job. We don't have anything to add. Certainly we'll have a lot to add once we get to the patent sections, but I think this helps set the stage really well. But like you said, Ian, the advent of mobile has added billions of new players and player hours per day, right? Before, you had to be tethered to your console or sitting in front of your desktop or your PC to play a game. Now you can play a game anywhere, anytime, right? You could be sitting in the metro, play a game. You can be waiting at the DMV, play a game. Mm-hmm. You can be waiting at the airport, play a game. So just opened up access to many more hours of playtime that previously were inaccessible.
And the playtime is interesting too, especially when we talk about mobile gaming. I'm sure we'll get into it as the slides go on. We got Matthew's, and we laid out kind of a surprise here going past 2021. So that's one of the big things, I think, right? Mobile is a big influence on why the growth, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, related to mobile, I mean, there's the social gaming and social game services, right? Social gaming is when non-players, people who don't traditionally think of themselves as gamers, are playing games like, I don't know, Scrabble, or I don't know what some of these, I don't play any mobile games. So, I don't know. Do you have favorites that you'd want to highlight here?
Oh, I still enjoy some of the board games on mobile. So I do play some Everdell from time to time.
Very nice. Yeah. So social gaming, people like my wife who wouldn't consider themselves to be gamers would play games on their mobile phone. And then there's the social aspect of hardcore gaming as well. People are streaming their gameplay. I thought this was fascinating. When I was in law school, I was in a house with like 5 other guys. And they would, I never really played games, but they would play games, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of times they would just like watch other people play games. And I was like, that's interesting. But I was like, but this is not so different than me watching my friends, my roommates play, because I wouldn't play myself, but I would watch them play. And then, they would watch somebody else play. It's no different really, but it's pretty entertaining. But there's a rise of that previously was not a thing, I think.
Looking at video gaming as kind of like a movie or a TV show, I suppose.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we watch like football players play a game. Why shouldn't we watch the best Madden players play the game as well, right?
We'll see how that changes over time.
That's right.
I think the biggest one here that we are looking at, though, has got to be from COVID, forcing people inside and having to search out some, well, maybe not the biggest, but one of the bigger contributors has to be, everybody's suddenly inside and you've got access to these video games. If you don't necessarily want to watch a movie or rent your stream from Netflix every day, you've got to do something different, right?
Yeah, I actually want to put a pin on this because COVID is a double-edged sword here. Mm-hmm. But yes, that is definitely a big thing. But the other things like the battle royale and battle passes have been a big revenue generator for games like Fortnite. others are copying that model, right, and generating revenue that way, and selling skins, and that kind of thing has been a revenue generator. And then certainly
Is the battle pass like a subscription base, right? Like you
that's right.
are having to keep paying every month, every 3 months or so, something like that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and the idea there is that you're not buying a new game necessarily, but you are having access to kind of a new environment to
Hmm.
have that battle. You can play with a larger number of people, um, you know, that kind of thing. So generally increasing the social signals associated with gaming. That's kind of the broad category that I would put it in.
Well, I know we've kind of touched on it, but the idea of keeping your same avatar or social presence within a game, but you're still putting money into that new game, as opposed to traditionally what you would buy Madden 1 year and then you'd have to start again the next with a whole new profile. Uh,
That's right. Yeah, that is something we should talk about. In terms of some of the challenges, I'm sure we'll get into this in the next couple of slides, but um, it is interesting in the world of movies. Sequels are kind of a no-brainer, right? If somebody's going
mhm,
to watch the first movie, they're most likely also going to watch the second movie. The amount of effort that goes into getting that second watch of the sequel is much easier than the first one, or to introduce a brand new movie to somebody else. Um, Kind of the opposite in games, right? Because you build up all this credibility, social signals, like you said, Ian,
mhm.
in the world of gaming, and then a new game comes out and you got to start at the bottom. You got to start all over again. It's hard. So there's some intrinsic forces that are keeping people on an existing game. And the battle royales, battle passes are a great way to leverage um, that desire or inclination, I think.
Agree.
Yep. Very good. So, and then the other thing we should talk about is the free to play model, right? That has really emerged as a growth driver. I think Farmville and Angry Birds, Candy Crush, those games really pioneered that model, if you will. And that has been a huge lift to the gaming industry, right?
Yep.
Was it Zynga? It became a huge multi-billion-dollar company overnight, and so they're doing really well. But that has brought a lot of gamers on board, brought a lot of money and revenue to the table, to the industry as a whole. Um, and then the double-edged sword here, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is that it also reduced barrier to entry as well, right?
I say, wait a sec. I thought you said this was free to play, Summer. How's it bringing money to the industry?
That's right. Well, you would buy. I don't know. You would buy things, right? It'd be like $1 purchase here or there to allow you to play the game, or play the game more efficiently, or play the game in a more fun way.
Hmm.
That kind of thing. Is that right, Ian?
Well, I think that's part of it, but I think they get most of their money through the creation of whales, or finding the whales that are going to spend all their money. Anybody that's willing to drop $10,000 on Candy Crush, as opposed to the guy that's spending $5 maybe every month, it's going to be a big driver of funds.
That's right. That's right. And advertisement, you can't
Hmm.
forget that. That's a huge way to generate your revenue in free to play environments. Nothing, um, uh, nothing new there, right? We've talked about this in the past. Advertisement is one of the greatest business models of all time,
Yes, it
because
is.
it is not value destructive, right? Or it's not a zero sum game. It is value accretive, and that's really, really nice as a business.
Agreed. So does
Okay.
that kind of cover where we're at coming into 2021 right now?
I think so. Everything is up and to the right. There's just a huge demand for games,
Hmm.
and developers just can't keep up with that demand naturally, right? And they're actually built these companies to live and work in 108% year-to-year growth environment, because that is the only way you could really, supply enough gaming time to meet the demand. So a pretty rosy environment, and actually you had to be a big spender and a big prolific developer, if you will, and a distributor of games to do well in this particular environment. And I think, this is something we started talking about the COVID. It is interesting. Maybe this is on our next slide. Is there's some headwinds here, right? So everything is really great up until 2021. What happens next?
Yeah. So suddenly, everything's rosy, right? We're spending money, a lot of money to be invested, and then now it's actually beginning to shrink. 2021 to 2024 here, we see a 13% reduction in the video game industry, which is pretty massive, especially when compared to what you're doing. It's pulling a 180.
Yep.
And you say, well, wait, maybe the rest of the world is experiencing this same situation. And it turns out, no. Real world GDP, it's up 11%. US is up 19. Japan is still falling,
For
which, like
Japan,
you say,
yeah.
Other considerations with that. So
that's right. That's a good correction of 130%, something like that.
yeah,
That's a lot. Quite a turnaround. And maybe COVID. I mean, there is a COVID related bump. Certainly added a lot of player hours. People were kind of trapped indoors and played more games as a way to kill time, but also to connect with people on a kind of socially distanced level. But maybe it masked this kind of decline that was coming. I don't know. But maybe the decline was coming pre-2021. Maybe it came in 2019, 2020, 2021. It just got covered up because of COVID, like it did for many other industries at that time. But yeah, that's a pretty massive turnaround. If you had said, well, U.S. real GDP is growing by 14 to 20% in this time period, and the video game industry is going to 2x or 3x that. So if U.S. is growing by 20%, we should predict that the gaming industry would also grow at 120 or whatever it is, 80% rate. But no, it's shrinking in real terms.
Okay. The big question is why is that happening, I guess. And that's kind of what we're going to try to touch on here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of barriers going up for video games to be able to make money on what they're doing, right?
That's right. Yeah. And again, Matthew Ball did a really good job. I had highlighted maybe 4 or 5 of these things in my initial research until I came across this slide deck. But yeah, we should talk about this. What is actually going on? What are the headwinds that are facing the video game industry? Because this helps us with discussion of how we would structure our patent strategy. So it's really important to understand what the macroeconomic headwinds are, and why the industry is shrinking as a whole. Big one is the end of mobile user growth, right? Anyone in the US and developed countries who's going to own a cell phone owns a cell phone by now. And of those people, who's going to play a game is playing a game by now. Certainly there are people in developing countries who are still growing, from a mobile user install base perspective, but those are your very low ARPU kind of users, right? So average revenue per user. So the easy growth story is no longer there. We talked about this with Netflix and other companies as well, right, Ian? I mean, there is a huge tailwind through 2021, and we have mostly consumed that tailwind, and now we're going to have to find other ways to grow.
And I think we see a lot of competition just within anybody using their cell phone, right? You're going to use your cell phone for X number of hours a day. Are you going to spend it gaming? Or there are other apps out there now that are going to provide pretty big distractions, right?
Yeah, it's true. This is also the problem Netflix and Spotify. We kind of touched upon this, so that this is very fitting. But there are only so many hours in a day, right? Time is a finite resource for a consumer. As much as we would all want to spend as much time on entertainment as possible, we do have real world things to do, like work and family and all those other things that I recommend everyone do.
We're not in that Wall-E world yet, huh?
That's right. Only a matter of time. But yeah, so there's only so many hours that somebody could spend on entertainment services of any kind, and other things are cutting into that, right? So um, uh, TikTok in particular, like social videos, are taking up more and more of users' time and attention. So that has been a challenge. So we talked about how you can play a mobile game while you're waiting at the doctor's office, but you can also watch a TikTok video or a YouTube short, or a what is the Instagram
Oh,
video thing?
I'm
Yeah,
not the right
we don't know,
person to ask for that. Oh my goodness.
stories or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
You can do that, right? And in many ways, that is a better use case for that kind of a downtime. Because if you think about it, imagine you're like trying to enter into a Fortnite battle royale, in while waiting at the doctor's office, let's say, right? And you have to, it takes a while to load that screen, first of all, right? Because that's a compute intensive process. And then you get put in a waiting room, right? You have to have enough players before you get dropped into a game. And you could get dropped into a game with players who are not as good, or players who are very good, and you die right away. And then you're out, and then you got to wait again. And then you don't know how long that game's going to last. It could be a great user experience. It could be a terrible user experience. You don't know. But TikTok videos deliver every single time, right? They're like,
I
their
say, what
algorithm is so
allows
tuned.
them to make such a better user experience, would you say?
Yeah, their algorithm's just better tuned. They surface videos that you are definitely interested in. They know this with a lot of certainty, and they will surface that video, and it will for sure entertain you, right? And it will entertain you for exactly the amount of time that you want to spend, right? It's not a lumpy experience or kind of an unpredictable experience. It's a very, a very predictable, pleasurable experience, I think. And I think that's probably true given the rise of these things. So yeah, that's a tough one to compete against.
Very much. And then what were some of the other ones that when you were doing your research that you kind of highlighted on?
Yeah. One more thing is this TikTok and these other companies. Well, let's see,
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
Oh, well, we were talking about how they can target users a little bit better initially here,
Yeah,
and then it's hard to do that with a video game, right?
that's right. That's right. Much harder to do that with a video game. Mhm. Yeah, nope, I forgot the point I was going
Okay.
to make.
Oh,
We'll
don't
cut
worry,
this
it'll
out.
come to you 5 minutes after we finish.
I know, right? um, yeah,
That's interesting. I mean, it's a very much an indirect competitor. Like you wouldn't necessarily think as a video game company, you're not fighting against another video game. You're fighting against videos, YouTube, TikTok. So,
yeah, yeah. And actually, this is the point. Is that the these social media apps like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram have actually gone up in usage in terms of usage hour consumed, while video games have gone down. So it's not just that like the videos are better, but I think social media apps are getting better, and probably more entertaining than video games at this point. So you're seeing an increase in the amount of time people spend on these social media apps, and then a decrease in the amount of time people spend on mobile video games, or any kind of video games in general. So it's not just that like there's some contraction, but the relative contraction is even more significant because those other apps are going up in time. And then the second point related to this is that if you look at the amount of time that people spend on these video games, like the top 5 games take up 50% of the user's playing time, right? So 50% of all of that time that's allocated, billions of hours that's allocated to video games, 50% of that goes to the top 5 games.
just 5. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. So the remaining 50% is just intensely fought after, as you can imagine. So it's not even, it's not even that there is like a huge chunk of like time, like in real terms, there's a lot of like billions of hours that people play games, but addressable available time is actually half of that. It's pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, I couldn't. It's too much.
Yes. Okay. So we have that. We have the other piece of this. We touched upon this. When you are operating in a world where you're growing at 108% year to year for 10 plus years, you have rising development costs, right? So there's a huge need to develop new games. And those developers and artists and graphic designers, their time, they're very attractive in the marketplace. So there's costs keep going up, but also the cost of developing better and better user experiences and game environments and cinematic quality of the games, all of that stuff keeps going up, right? The games have to be better and better every year.
Yeah.
Like if Spider-Man is an amazing video game, but if you want to attract people to Spider-Man 2, it has to be that much better. The quality from every perspective has to be better. And that leads to a rising development cost environment, right? So you have, a huge uptick on the development cost, and that trend hasn't gone away, right? Just because the market is contracting and going down, simultaneously, rising costs are still going up, right? So because this market correction has happened so quickly, and maybe has been masked by COVID-related upticks, the industry as a whole hasn't kind of figured this out, and is certainly dealing with it now, right? We see a lot of layoffs and closures in the gaming industry and space. We certainly see that with our clients. This is a concern. So market is correcting, but it is a tough environment to be in. And then I guess related to that is also, the production timelines have stretched out, right? It takes more time to make these games. It takes more time to get a game to market. So
we don't have a way to react quickly to this downturn here.
Yeah, because it takes 3-4 years to develop a game. I mean, it takes a lot more time to make a game than it does a movie, right? So it's a big complicated ship that you gotta maneuver.
So we started out on a really high note. Now we're kind of on a down note here, Summer.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll highlight, which I think Matthew Ball did a great job. I hadn't picked up on this myself, but the growth in foreign developers. He, in some of his slides, makes the argument that foreign developers are, building more and more games. So, the example he uses is that, and this is true for everything, but in China, for example, whenever they have a localized industry come up, it comes at the direct cost of a US-based company kind of shrinking in that marketplace, right? So like if Facebook, for example, is doing really well in China, but they have a local competitor, people will switch over to that local competitor, and it will grow at the rate at which Facebook shrinks in that market. Same is true for movies, right? So movies, they've started developing movies in China, and it used to be like the top 3 out of 5 biggest grossing movies in China were American movies, Hollywood produced studio movies. But that's not true anymore, right? It's like 1 out of 10 now or something like that. 1 out of 5. I don't remember the numbers exactly. But 4 of the 5 top grossing movies in China will be Chinese produced. Similar
There's
thing
parallels like Bollywood, right?
Yeah, Bollywood, exactly. They've always had a pretty strong Bollywood industry, and I think 1 out of 50 all-time grossing movies in India, for example, is Hollywood produced, right? So 1 out of 50 all time. So they have a very strong localized economy, and that's because of cultural factors, for sure. But also production costs, right? I mean, my guess is that Chinese studios, Japanese studios are making video games at a much lower cost basis than American studios are. And they tend to be more resonant culturally. So even if they're worse games, they are more relevant to experiences and stories and history and culture of those countries. So it used to be that, and we'll talk about this, like this is all kind of related. There's deflationary pricing going on, right? So Matthew Ball has this other slide where, video games were like $60. Like Mortal Kombat was
Yeah.
$60 in 1992, and it is like $69.99 today. So the cost of this, like the pricing power has just eroded completely. Right? Whereas with movies, I remember going to the movies as a high schooler, and I paid what, like $3.50 for a
Oh,
ticket,
it was a
something like
lot
that.
cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's now what, $15? I don't even know.
The pricing thing always interests me because I think part of the argument and why they should, or the consumer argues that they should be cheaper, is there used to be um, physical media that was produced alongside it, right? Which meant manufacturing that, which meant shelf space and all that and shipping. But these days it's all digital, right? Or a large chunk of it is.
Yeah,
But
but those I mean, this is so interesting. I'm glad you
yeah.
brought this up, because in many ways, um, it is maybe more expensive to get to market today, because
Hmm.
you would pay, like you would pay what, 2%, 3% of your cost to like CD manufacturers and sleeve manufacturers. You would pay another 5% to like big box retailers, 10% maybe 20%, and that was that. And then the actual production or stamping out the CDs would be another few percentage points. All in, you'd probably pay 30%, 40%, 50% of your
Hmm.
margin to the production capacity. But now you pay that to app stores, right? Like
Right.
if you
Right.
are in the Apple App Store, you're paying 30 to 40%. If you're in the Steam App Store, you're paying 40 to 50%. Probably more expensive to get to market today than it was in the world of physical media, just because that value chain was distributed across several different players and the pricing power accrued to the video game maker. Whereas now, video game makers are beholden to some of these closed app store environments. So really interesting.
It is interesting to think about how that cost just never went away. But
That's right.
to the consumer, they expect it to have gone away, right?
Yeah, not so, but yeah, so that is a real deflationary pricing pressure on these
Hmm.
games. If it was $60 to buy Mortal Kombat in 1992 and it's $60 to buy it today, then and it's 5x, 100x more expensive to make Mortal Kombat, that's a real problem in terms of the profitability of the industry as a whole. And the reason I think this happened is because video game makers would justify it by saying, "Hey, we're increasing our TAM, right?
Hmm.
We are, our addressable market is getting bigger and bigger, so we will forego some profit in an effort to expand the market as a whole and bring in more revenue as a whole." Because remember, these games are also still zero marginal cost to make and distribute.
Hmm.
So the TAM has always been the reason why this deflationary pricing was acceptable. But when you zoom into the TAM, it turns out that like the market is growing in China, India, Japan, and some of these other countries, but that market is inaccessible to US video game makers, right? So
Hmm.
in fact, the TAM is not going up, or not going up at the rate that you think it's going up. So the deflationary pricing is a double whammy, right? Because like you can't combat that with more scale and with more TAM. That's why this is also intertwined, right? Like the app
Yeah.
stores are intertwined with the cost bases, with which is intertwined with the deflationary pricing, which is intertwined with the growth of foreign game developers. um, it is a tough, tough environment currently.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So looking at that, looks like just making sure. I think we've covered most of these concepts here, with the pricing and mobile gaming. Yeah.
That's right.
Any, yeah. Any other threats to growth that we're kind of looking at, or barriers here?
Yeah, no, I think this is it. I mean, yeah, I forgot that we had these numbers here, but yeah, down 32% since 2021 in terms of the number of hours customers are spending
Yeah.
on
And
games.
they're waiting to play new games as well.
Yeah.
They're waiting for those prices to go down.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, oh, yeah. I don't know. There are some bright spots though, Ian. Right? Is that what we're going to talk about next, or are we just
Yes,
gonna
yes. We
gonna
can't
pile
all
on some
be
more?
dour and negative here. We got to have some potential, uh, some bright spots in the future here, right?
That's right. Why don't you want to kick us off with what you see as potential bright spots, and then we'll go from there.
I think really interesting because you were talking about recently about how you watch people play games back in college, right? And how that's kind of becoming something where people go out and look at this. Well, the next part that we can parallel here, like we got the Super Bowl coming up, right? There's a lot of things that go on with the Super Bowl, like advertising, but also the other part of it is betting, right? And we're gonna potentially see some betting focused around esports or these video game sports, which I thought was really interesting as a potential growth area. The other thing that we're looking at, and I don't think we have it on this slide, but the incorporation of like AI can be interesting and as a way to reduce production costs potentially or improve user experiences as well.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. It is interesting. Esports and betting is certainly taken over the sports media industry. We talked a little bit about this um, when we did the Disney episode,
Yeah,
right?
the ESPN there, yeah.
Yeah. So that is interesting, and I don't know. I am concerned about what happens to us culturally if we are all betting money. I mean, certainly doesn't seem like a good thing as a whole, but certainly some
No.
companies are making money. But who am I to cast judgment? Um, but yeah, that's something to think about. AI has reduced development costs, potential, or has the potential to reduce development costs. It is interesting. Like if you parallel this to the movie industry, it hasn't in real term reduced. Like CGI
Mhm.
has become a big part of like big budget movies, blockbuster movies, but in many ways it hasn't reduced the cost of movies, but what used to be a $500 million movie, can be made in $200 million and still look like a $500 million movie, right?
Right.
There are still $500 million movies out there, but you know, I watched this movie, everything.
Everywhere all at once.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
very creative, right? And they used a lot of CGI. And you could tell like it was lower quality CGI than what you
Mhm.
would see in like Top Gun Maverick or something like that. Um, but they use their storytelling in a very creative way to leverage that, right, and lighten up that expectation, or subvert some of those expectations in some way. So like there's a real premium in terms of like storytelling, I think,
Mhm.
game development that will leverage AI in a meaningful way. um, so that these lower budget movies feel like a higher budget movies, and lower budget games will feel like higher budget games. But yeah, the jury's still out in terms of like how much they reduce the cost of production. Another
True.
way to think about this is like movies in the past, would have like, I don't know, like 20 CGI frames per minute or something like that, and now
Mhm.
they have like 180 CGI frames per minute. It's yeah, it is interesting. It's something to keep an eye on, but that's certainly a way to reduce costs, or also a way to make a lower budget thing look like a higher budget thing.
Mhm. Mhm. What kind of things excite you potentially as a way to grow in this industry?
Yeah. Yeah, I think ARVR is a big potential tailwind. I mean, we talked
Mhm.
about the Apple Vision Pros, the Meta Quest. There's a lot of interest in this space. Although we'll see. I think Apple just announced this week that they were abandoning their other Vision product. I mean, they're going to continue to develop the Vision Pro, but they had, who knows what they had, like glasses or something like that they're going to abandon. um so maybe not, but that's a big hope. That's a big use case for video games, I think. And then we have crypto and Web3. We have several clients in this space who are doing things that are interesting. We talked about entitlements and signaling factors that don't carry over from game to game. Crypto and Web3 apps make that possible, right? They allow you to carry your badging potentially and your experience from one game to next in a seamless way, in a verifiable way. So that's certainly something to think about. That may enable new experiences, new game development cycles, new sales cycles, and that kind of thing. So that could be a big thing. And then cloud gaming, we talked about this as well in the Microsoft episode. There is a market there. Somebody's going to figure it out.
Yep.
We'll talk about who maybe, but yeah, there's a big push towards cloud gaming, and that's a potential way to generate a lot of money.
So we've got a couple different options. Do you think there's any chance of reviving some of the old growth areas?
I don't think so. I think a lot of those growth items that we talked about from 2011 to 2021 were one-time events, right? Like if you are going to become a cross-platform game, so if you were PlayStation exclusive and then now you're on Xbox and PC, you've done that coding work and you were everywhere, and now there isn't another cross-platform opportunity for you, right? That is done. So many of those things, like being cross-platform, are one-time events. Do you see it differently, Ian?
No, I think we have to look to the future here within this industry.
Yeah. Like if you're going to be on mobile, you're on mobile, right? Like there's no other boost that you can do beyond being on mobile. Or if you're going to add a battle royale element, like you've added it already and there's no additional boost there. So I think video game developers will have to continue to innovate, right? Like battle royales were a great new game genre, if you will. Maybe there'll be other new innovations like that we'll see come out. But most of the drivers that were existing in through 2021 have been consumed by the industry, right? And they can't be relied upon for additional growth.
So looking at it, potentially we're looking at ways to reduce the cost of production, right? What about like outreach, customer discovery, things like that?
Yeah, and that is it is interesting. Everybody's been saying that the video game industry has been innovating and disrupting. And I don't know if I would call it that, right? I would say that they have been modernizing, right? They're taking advantage of the environment that we're in, but I wouldn't call it true disruption at this point, because what you have done is you have taken an existing model that worked and you have just supercharged it with these tailwinds, or these growth pillars, if you will. You haven't seen a disruption in that model, right? Like you haven't seen a true changing of how games are produced, like how the cost basis is like not completely different. So maybe now is the time that this industry is ripe for true disruption, like the ones that Clayton Christensen talks about, right, in Innovator's Dilemma. What does that disruption look like? Maybe it will come at the production level, like we talked about. AI is really changing the game and the cost structure of many of these developing these games, and that will come to fore maybe, and that will upend the industry in and of itself. You have delivery and distribution mechanisms, right? That will change. You talked about this, Ian. You had to first get the CD made and stamped and into a big box retailer, and then you had to purchase like the end cap, right? Like the most valuable part of get it in front of the visual field of the consumer. So that has changed. I mean, we have companies like Steam and Discord who are popping up. I shouldn't say popping up. These are many
they've been here a little
industries.
while, but how about their conversion rates though, as far as actually from making a customer aware to actually clicking on that ad to actually purchasing?
Yeah. I mean, the existing model for advertising digital products has been social media, right? We talked about this. Facebook, Facebook and Google Ads being some of the greatest business models ever. So the idea is that you display an ad based on a user's feed. You figure out what they're interested in, and you display an ad for Farmville. And maybe I should stop using Farmville. I'm dating myself here. What is a better? What is the one you use?
For current day?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I don't have good examples here.
We are both old, I
You
guess.
could say Among Us was probably one of the more recent ones I've been aware
Okay.
of like something somebody jumps on pretty often and it's buying cosmetics for and all that. So.
Okay, so we'll use Among Us. So, you get an ad for Among Us, and then you click it, you install it, you play it, and you're on your way, right? So it's a very easy conversion cycle. But that cycle for AAA games is brutal on a social media or on Google, right? So you're often on Facebook on your phone, you see an ad for Call of Duty, you click on it, and they're like, "Yep, you must use your other computer
Yeah.
to purchase it." And oh, by the way, it's going to take you 15 to 16 hours to actually download the game. And so we'll see you in a couple of days. Don't turn off your computer. It's just, it doesn't work, right?
It's a bad
It's really tough.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, really
Maybe
tough.
cloud gaming is the answer to that then. So.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think this is what makes Discord so powerful potentially, because people are on Discord already streaming their games or talking about games that they like, talking about individual games, and people are able to look up each other's like libraries of games and things like that, and it's a great discovery mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see an ad on Discord, you're usually on your PC anyways, and it's easy to download a game from there or install it or hop on over to a cloud gaming platform and go from there. So that might be a much better uh, advertising medium than what exists currently. And then maybe we should talk about Steam as well, right? I don't know if we have a separate chart for it or not.
Not for Steam right now, no.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, a new distribution model. It used to be that you would buy a game for your PlayStation, your console games
Mm-hmm.
from a big box retailer. You'd buy a physical disc or a cartridge, and then you pop it into your system and you play it, or you would go to the website of like a Madden and then download the game there for your PC. But that's a very fragmented experience. I think now people will go to like the PlayStation App Store
Mm-hmm.
and download games from there. And on the PC, there's nothing really quite similar, right? It's not a great experience until Steam comes along. Is that right, Ian?
Yeah, I'd say Steam was the big one. And then they had some followers try to copy the same model, whether they were like Electronic Arts or Ubisoft doing their own kind of play on that. But they were not as big. Steam, I think, has just captured such a large part of the user base.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
really the only bright spot in PC gaming right now, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think PC sales are up. So like certainly like PlayStation sales, console games sales are up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Xbox we talked about is shrinking. Nintendo's up a lot. That's maybe the other bright spot in the gaming industry.
Yeah.
But Nintendo's interesting if we could take a aside for a second, because that has been a real uptick in like console sales. But really none of the rest of the industry benefits from that, right? I think what is it, 80% of all games played on a Switch are like Nintendo games.
Yeah.
So it helps Nintendo certainly, but it doesn't help the rest of the industry. Now, Switch 2 is coming out, which is supposed to have much better graphics capability and processing capabilities. So maybe people will buy a Switch and or would be able to play more like AAA games or games from other studios. It's a much more performant device. So that would give an uplift to the rest of the industry. I don't know. But certainly has a possibility. But historically, even though Switch sales have been up, it hasn't uplifted the rest of the industry nearly to the extent that you would expect. And then PC console games. Oh, sorry, Sony. Their sales have gone up, but that has been at the cost of Xbox. So like if you aggregate Sony and or PlayStation and Xboxes together, their sales have gone down, right? So that's showing a contraction. But also more tellingly, Sony, even though their sales have gone up, their profit margins have gone down year to year. So even the best positioned, most important, valuable, console maker can't make it work. I mean, they certainly don't have the margins that you would want Sony to have, and they have nowhere near the margins of a software developer or software company. So a tough market to be in as well. But PC sales have been up. And that could also, there's also COVID related uptick there, right? Like Mac and PC sales have gone up, even though you don't really play games on a Mac. But the PC sales, along with Steam, have done really well. So that is one big bright spot.
Well, it's good to know it's not all dour everywhere throughout the industry.
Yeah, and that is like actually Steam, and maybe we should do an episode on them at some point. But a fascinating company. I was looking at some of their court documents. They were in a lawsuit, and Steam, they do about $22 billion in revenue.
Okay.
How many people do you think work at Steam?
My guess is it's going to be a small number, isn't it? Are we going to say like something like 500, 200? What?
Yeah, 350.
350. Okay.
And then in the course documents, like out of those 350 people, 250 of those work in their like video game, and they have an ARVR division, which like they used to make games like Counter-Strike and a few other games.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Counter-Strike is, for our age demographic, a pretty memorable game. So Steam, the platform, 100 people work there, 100 people, and they generate $22 billion in revenue. One of the most profitable technology companies, even in Silicon Valley software distribution models. It's insane.
Yeah.
They can't stop making money and can't stop growing. But yeah, they have an app store model, so they take 30% of revenue for sales that are made through the store. But users love using this model, right? They are able to download games this way. They have access to like a historic library of like 10,000 games, like something Xbox 360 can't offer. Not even close in terms of experience, right? So really fascinating. They have ability to keep people on the platform and keep them engaged. They do a really good job there. Really 10 plus years of innovation there. And slow and steady build. But they are just crushing it. So much so that we kind of talked about this in our Xbox episode, but Microsoft purchased Activision Blizzard for $80 billion. And at that point, I was like, why didn't they buy Steam, right? Like, this is a much more natural partner for what Microsoft would want to do. They would want to be the app store in the world of PC gaming. Like we talked about this, like buying a big expensive studio just doesn't fit with what they want to do.
No. But the question is, can you even buy Steam?
Yeah, probably
and based
not
on
anymore.
The research, no, it sounds like they're never going to sell, at least not anytime soon.
Yeah, they could have. They might have been available for sale, 4 or 5 years ago, and that would have been a great buy for Microsoft, and a much more strategic and congruent with their strategy type of a buy instead of a big expensive studio. But I mean, they got a good deal, right? So like, this is where one of my favorite Warren Buffett quote comes in. And, the one where he says, "I much rather buy a rocket ship at a reasonable price than stock that's going down at a discount." So I always think about that. And Microsoft purchased. Actually, Activision, like Call of Duty is one of the most popular franchises of all time.
It's one of those top 5 games, right?
Yeah. And not just a game, but an entertainment product. Like it has made more money than all of the Marvel franchise has for Warner Brother Discovery. So like really, really crazy to think about, but they have returned more enterprise value than any other entertainment media company in that same period of time. So pretty amazing. Still not a good buy for Microsoft, but
oh well.
We've talked about this.
Yes. So we've got a couple ways going forward. What do you expect to see if you're advising one of these groups on their IP strategy going forward? What would you want to see?
Yeah, and maybe we can go to the next slide, but it really
Yeah.
depends, right? So this is the value chain of bringing a game to market, right? So for the people who are listening, the value chain goes something like this. You have to generate the game itself, right? So you have to generate the graphics, you have to generate the gameplay, the dialogue and the cinematics and all that stuff, and effects, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then you typically have to code it, and then nowadays you have to do some cross-platform coding. And we talked about tools in our Microsoft episode about cross-platform coding systems as well. But you had to code it for the PC and the console systems like Xbox, PlayStation, PC, Switch, potentially in the future. And then you have to code it for mobile and cloud computing type of
Mm-hmm.
applications. And then you have to, for those particular applications, PC and cloud, you have to have some in-app purchases and that kind of thing. Um, for the PC console systems, you have a one-time purchase.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so once you're done coding it, you have to market the game, right? You have to make people aware of this game, and then you have to sell it and distribute it to those people, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to either get it into a big box retailer, or you have to sell it on an app store like the Apple App Store or the Steam App Store. Um, so you have sales and distributions associated with that.
Yes.
So that's how it goes. And this is how we start all of our analysis from a patent perspective. We always start with the value chain, right? Who in this value chain is going to have the most pricing power? And usually that's where we want to file patents, right? So if whatever our client is doing that is at the intersection of the place that's going to have the pricing power, those end up being the most valuable patents in the long run. So if we have a video game maker that is using AI, for example, to
Mm-hmm.
develop its graphics and gameplay, certainly that's a great place to file patents because now you have leverage on that value chain, right? Like you have dramatically changed and reduced the cost of making that game. And now you can put pressure on the rest of the marketplace to, you know, work with your cost structure, or you're just more profitable. So you can enforce more terms onto the rest of the value chain. So that's to me a great place to start if you are a game developer.
Okay. So ideally being more upstream than downstream.
Potentially. So that's one place to go. If you are in the business of allowing your games to be cross-platform, or if you are one of these Unreal engines that
Mm-hmm.
allow you to do cross-platform work, that's a great place to file patents as well, right? Because it is allowing you to unlock additional value streams or go-to-market motions. So that could become really valuable and a potential choke point, right? Because if everybody's going to have to go through this process, you might as well be the one that corners the market or has a best in class product that you can distribute to the marketplace. So that's another place to file patents, in my opinion.
Okay.
Um, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ian.
No, I just agreeing with you there. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The next place is I would try to get in, like if you are helping marketing, right? Like we talked about Discord as being
Mm-hmm.
a great marketing channel potentially. Usually, when you are in a marketplace where the actual content providers are very fragmented, like we've seen with, um, uh, let's see, Netflix, for example. We talked about YouTube a little bit too, right? Like Facebook has done this. There's a lot of individual people who are making Facebook posts.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any like they're commoditized in many ways, right? Like it doesn't matter whose post you watch or listen to, as long as there's posts to watch or listen to. The marketing folks, like if you are able to provide a great, if you're able to aggregate demand there at the Discord level, for example, then eventually the marketing vendor or provider will accrue most of the value in the market chain, right? So they will commoditize all the suppliers, and retain 30-40% of all the dollars that get spent in this value chain. So, if I am Discord, for example, I'm making some pretty heavy investments in my IP strategy at this point because we have a real opportunity to aggregate demand. And actually, like, there are like market conditions that have to be true to make this all happen. But like, the more desperate the vendors are. So like this happened in the newspaper world, right? Like their revenues were declining. So they were pretty desperate to be like, Facebook, host our stuff, right? Well, like,
Right.
stories on here, or Apple News, we'll give you a deal. So the more desperate these games are, the more contraction there is in the marketplace, the more these companies will play ball with a marketing vendor like Discord or somebody who's aggregating demand. I would work on really making that a platform. Or if I have a client who is going to be working with somebody like Discord, I'm trying to file my patents that are more marketing and aggregation oriented and aggregating demand oriented. Because the actual game itself might be commoditized, might not be worth filing patents there unless they are disrupting that process.
Very good.
Okay,
All right.
so and then the last thing I would do is, if I'm Steam, I'm investing pretty heavily in my marketplace, right? Like all the reasons why people keep coming back to the Steam marketplace to purchase a game, like whether it is entitlements, cross gaming, like a lot of the Web3 things that we talked about, being able to carry attribution from one game to the next, those kinds of things I think are pretty important. So I would drive a pretty hard stake in the ground from an IP perspective there. Similarly, if I have a client who's actually going to be working with Steam or Valve, I would be investing a lot of IP time and effort in on that side of the coin, right? Like allowing my games to have some API into other games or other titles or other experiences. That's where I would put my marketing dollars or IP dollars.
Makes sense. So do you want to know what they're doing?
Yeah, let's see what they're doing.
Okay. Okay. So we're gonna start with Tencent here. Owner of Epic Games, which is another one of those competitors to Steam, and owner of Fortnite, which the Battle Royale, probably one of the bigger names in that. Still one of the bigger names in that.
That's right.
So it looks like they've got kind of a decent wide-ranging focus, but it's mostly, I'd say, 3/4 focused on like imaging processing. So we're creating graphics, we're improving how we build and develop these games, right? Interestingly enough, we were able to kind of look at this, and it's like a word cloud, if you will, but for like the competitive landscape. Most of the valuable patents that they have are focused in like video decoding and processing and things like that. And they've put in, of that remaining like 25%, a good chunk of focus into that as well. So they're split around, but mostly looks like they're trying to reduce costs or improve quality in the development side, I would say.
That is interesting. Yeah, I would certainly want them to focus more on the actual like gameplay mechanics of a battle royale, right? Like creating objects, virtual management of those objects, like social aspects of those items, all the things that make that virtual or battle royale environment fun from a user perspective. That's what I would try to patent. I mean, guess that you want to patent the pipeline to get this battle royale into people's computer, that patented. But to me, a better, more high value portfolio is the actual gameplay aspects, right? If you can patent that, it's a much better place to be from my perspective.
Moving on to Sony. Once again, they still also have kind of like a 60% focus on like two areas. However, this is mostly, once again, gameplay development. So we've got geometry, image processing, object processing, things like that, and gameplay elements as well. Although their valuable patents are kind of spread wide through those areas. What's nice is we're beginning to see some stuff dealing with ARVR in here as well. So we've got heart rate and like remote play type patents as well. Some dealing with like video tracking and things like that, and like operation of devices and buttons, body operation, things like that. So it looks like they're kind of focusing a little bit more on the development, but also the ARVR type space as well here with Sony.
Yeah, I would say most of these patents are related to consoles,
Mm-hmm.
and that's certainly been their focus for the longest time. I don't know if that's viable, right, in the long term. I mean, their strategy has been to acquire studios and have some lock-in into their console, and they have been very successful with that. But that's not a great market to be in, right? Like they're
Right.
seeing profit pressures. So if I'm Sony, I'm going back to that value chain slide that we had and say, hey, where can we intersect? Like, what is the next step for us? Because otherwise, we're going to be in a kind of a shrinking and profit challenged environment. So yeah, that certainly they're starting to make the right bets in the AR/VR. Maybe that's the way to go. But yeah, I think 60 to 70% of these patents look like they're console related,
I
and
would
to
agree with
me,
that.
that's not a great place to be from a patent perspective.
Well, so with the 60 to 70%, let's move on to Microsoft here. And theirs actually looks pretty different from Tencent and Sony in that they seem, and I think we saw this with the Microsoft discussion, they kind of push on every lever equally about, right? We've got a much more even distribution of what they may be working on. With this, we're looking at, uh, once again, video production, video game production. They've got sensors. They are dealing with neural networks, large language models, AI. Um, the security alerts seemed interesting. I'm not really sure what they're going with there, but it's it looks different enough that they just kind of go everywhere with their strategy.
Yeah, and we talked about Microsoft in the last episode, so I won't belabor the
Mm.
point, um, but yeah, I think there's certainly room here to optimize their patent portfolio. My favorite one here is the tongue gesture
Yeah,
AR/VR patent. That's some far out stuff. Very cool. Good for Microsoft. But yeah, I would certainly be focused more on the interfaces, right? Like if they really want to make the Xbox 360 a thing,
hmm
if that's going to be their next thing, I would definitely spend less time on all the console patents. That doesn't seem like the way to go. And I think they have a real opportunity with Xbox 360, or sorry, with Xbox Game Pass. If they
right.
can make that happen, that would be where I'd be placing my bets from a patent perspective.
I say it does seem like there's a lot of valuable patents within the live streaming space for Microsoft here, so they're working on it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think it's important to note as we went through these last three companies, pretty wide ranging of concepts that they're doing, about 9 to 10 in the landscape.
Yeah.
You tell me what you think is different about Nintendo here.
So one of these does not look like the others.
One does not. They very much do their own thing. It's almost entirely console and video game development related. And there's about 5 different categories that we're looking at here. So um, Nintendo, they can just do their thing. It works for them. They've got their loyal fan base, and it works for them.
That's right. It is fascinating. If I'm Nintendo, certainly with Switch 2 being more performant from a graphics capability perspective, to me, it seems like they are poised to be the big winner in the console market.
Mm-hmm.
I think Microsoft will get pushed out at some point because Sony has their exclusive strategy, which has worked really well, and I expect it to continue to work really well. But in many ways, Nintendo has their own exclusive strategy, and their exclusives are Nintendo games, right? Like you
Right.
can't get Mario Kart anywhere else, that kind of thing. And if like people buy Switches or Nintendo consoles to play Nintendo games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I can buy a Switch and then play, like Gran Turismo, which is a Sony exclusive, for example, on my Switch, I'm probably not buying a PlayStation at that point
No, no.
because it's good enough. And if I need more performant systems, I'm probably going to buy a PC at this point. So if I'm Nintendo, I'm spending a lot more time developing patents around this interoperability um, concept, right? Because I want to get, I want you to buy these games through the Nintendo App Store because I get a 30 to 40% cut on that as free money. So I would work on developing more performant console. I see there's a real opportunity to take market share away from Microsoft and potentially Sony. So that's where I would spend my time and effort from a patent perspective. I mean, maybe Nintendo will never do it. It's just not their thing. It's not in their
It's a culture
DNA.
thing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's a real opportunity here given where the industry is.
And with that, we've kind of looked at the different IP strategies there. We've looked at this. I mean, it's interesting. The video game market has kind of gone through a very unique series, a decade and a half here, right? You don't see it many other places. And if you're leaving people with a couple final thoughts with what we've talked about, Summer, what do you feel is the takeaway here?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are a developer in this game environment or any part of this value chain, you really have to think about where do you sit inside of this value chain, right? And where is all the market power and pricing power going to aggregate in this value chain? And you need to file patents there, right? Like, and there's no one size fits all strategy here because the market is contracting, which is a sure sign that there's going to be some reorganization in the marketplace, right? Like we talk about this traditionally in a contracting market, you have consolidation. Maybe you don't have consolidation here because we talked about this in the Microsoft episode too, because all the stakeholders are, have some pretty large stakes in the ground.
Right.
But they are bringing some efficiencies through acquisitions and working together and that kind of thing. So like maybe you deal with the excess consumer surplus that way, right? By driving efficiencies across competitor sets. So that may be possible. But yeah, you really, really have to look at your value chain. You really have to think about, are we developing technologies that are disrupting this space? In which case we need to file patents on those things. Or are we operating in a space where somebody else is going to accrue a lot of market power and pricing power? In which case I would file patents that are as adjacent to that market power concentrator, if you will, or your patents are going to become worthless over time or less valuable over time, right? They're going to get commoditized. So even if you have strong patents, if what you're doing is a commodity, your patents don't help you nearly as much. Did I miss
Excellent.
anything? Would you have anything to add to that, Ian?
No, I would say just a big thank you to Matthew Ball here. His insights were very helpful throughout this process, and I really enjoyed this one, Summer.
Yeah, I did too. And I'd second that. If you are interested at all, I would check out the slide deck that Matthew Ball put out. We cover just a fraction of what's in there. So check it out. It's a really good read. I feel like I learned a lot and certainly informed this podcast quite a bit. So big thanks to him. And thanks for doing this together, Ian. This has been a really fun journey through the world of video games. I would love to come back to it and talk about Steam and Valve some more and Nintendo some more. It's just a great marketplace to talk about.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening, for bearing through this episode with us. But hopefully you learned something and hopefully you enjoyed the discussion. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you all. Take care.